The History of Scotland, Part 3, The Circle Builders. While undoubtedly the hunter-gatherer people of the British Isles had a religion, and occasional aspects of it are hinted at by the stone carvings that they left behind, the evidence is little and far between. For the Neolithic farming people, however, things are very different. Across the British Isles are mysterious stone circles. Their origin has been something of much discussion over the years, being attributed to everything from the creation of druids to Roman soldiers turned to stone by Briton magic. Yet it was not understood until recently quite how ancient these are. In the Mesolithic hunter-gatherer period, there are practically no remains of humans, and those few that there are indicate that these people practice what is known as excarnation, or sky burial, where the dead were placed in high places to be torn apart by birds of prey. With the arrival of Neolithic farmers, the practice of traditional burial becomes the norm. With these burials, the first of the great stone monuments appear across Western Europe. They are typically made up of two vertical stones, with a large flat stone laid over the top of the two. When covered with earth, this would create a chamber where the departed could be placed, along with grave goods that they would bring with them to the next world. From the expertise and spiritual tradition that came from these chamber tombs, across Europe a number of regional variations began to develop. In Scotland, a relatively unique twist to the tradition of these burials is found, known as a cairn tomb or court cairn. Here, smaller slabs of stone are used to create a smaller coffin-sized chamber into which the deceased is placed, along with the items to take with them to the next world. This is then buried, though likely marked somehow in a way similar to a modern grave. This style likely originated in southwestern Scotland and went on to spread up into Perth and Kinross on the eastern coast of the Central Belt. It also likely spread quickly into the north of Ireland, possibly showing the first evidence of the millennia-long connection between southwestern Scotland, Argyll and Ulster. As early as 3500 BC, while the first cities of Sumerian civilization were being built half a world away, at the important British regional centre of Orkney in the Northern Isles of Scotland, a temple was being built. The Ness of Brodgar is one of the largest complexes found in Britain dating from the Neolithic period, and possibly the earliest consistently dated structure, though there is one potentially older one from southern Ireland. This may have been a significant place of pilgrimage at the time, likely receiving visitors from across the north of Scotland, and indicates quite possibly the first truly complicated society present in the British Isles. The beliefs of these people are still murky and mysterious, but they seem to be largely based in the worship of their ancestors, similar to many better attested religions from this period of world history. Over potentially more than 1,000 years of continuous use, this temple was rebuilt, repaired and added on to. Dozens of generations passed through the walls in this most ancient building, until they too likely forgot the true origins and who built it as the Neolithic marched slowly onwards. Towards 3100 BC, more and more complicated structures begin to appear throughout the British Isles, with the largest collection in any one place still being on the Isles of Orkney. This is where we find the most famous of the passage tombs, such as the Tomb of the Eagles in Maes Howe. These tombs consisted of a buried stone structure where bodies would be interned, with a narrow passageway through which the burial chamber could be accessed. Some of these tombs contain tens of thousands of bones, representing dozens of generations over hundreds of years. These tombs were likely the sites of strange rituals that are not well understood. At the Tomb of the Eagles, the bones of golden eagles are also found mixed in with those of humans, and at Maes Howe, the sun of the winter solstice illuminates inside the tomb through the long passageway. It was around this time that the first stone circles were put up, with the earliest definitively dated ones coming from the north of Scotland, rather than the southwest of England as had once been thought. These great stone circles, often contained within an earthwork called a henge, are still mysterious, and their purpose is unknown, though obviously thought to be religious in nature. Like almost all structures of the time that were not clearly designed for habitation, most stone circles do contain burials. Stone circles were once thought to be extremely difficult to make, possibly taking hundreds or thousands of people and making a massive impact on the local economy. However, it is becoming clear, when the process of their creation is better understood, that the process was likely less intense than previously thought. Indeed, in many cases, using the technology of the time, a team of less than 10 people could have moved and placed all but the biggest stones using a system of pulleys, wedges, balances and rollers. Many of the stones used, especially in the later, more developed circles, do seem to have been taken a quite considerable distance. For instance, the great blue stones of Stonehenge were likely quarried and transported from Wales. This was likely done by water, rather than by hundreds of workers rolling them hundreds of miles as was once assumed. In general, now that we understand them more, we see that these people seem to have relied much more on thinking their plans through and addressing them as efficiently as possible, rather than the brute force it was assumed for most of the study of their history. Over time, the stone circles spread, likely originating from northern Scotland to across the British Isles, with a particular concentration in the southwest of England where Stonehenge is found. And with the spread came evidence of increased contact between the different regions of the British Isles. At the most famous stone circle of Stonehenge, evidence of huge feasts have been discovered, where large numbers of animals were roasted and eaten. When the isotopic evidence of the bones of these animals were analysed, something surprising was found: that many of the animals consumed on site came from far away, far further than they would have come if they were purely interested in getting animals as easily as possible. Some of them came from as far away as Scotland and possibly even Ireland. At this time, again though, the outside world was changing. Already by this time, the first examples of a shiny new substance called metal had probably made their way into the hands of the upper echelons of Neolithic British society, though how to use them or make them was likely still a mystery. All this will change in the next chapter.